I was 22 when my brother first laughed at my career choice. Not a gentle chuckle or a supportive teaser, full-bodied, head-thrown-back laugh that echoed through our family kitchen and settled into my bones like a cold I couldn't shake. I had just announced that I was starting as a junior marketing coordinator at a small digital agency, my diploma still warm from the printer, my dreams still intact and unmarked by the world's sharp edges. Marketing? He said, stirring sugar into his coffee with the kind of deliberate slowness that suggested he was savoring the moment. What are you going to do? Convince people to buy things they don't need? His engineering degree hung on our parents' wall like a golden badge of honor, while my communications degree felt suddenly flimsy in comparison. Like tissue paper in a thunderstorm, the kitchen fell silent except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of our mother loading the dishwasher. She didn't defend me. Our father, hidden behind his newspaper, said nothing. In that silence, I felt myself shrinking, becoming smaller and smaller until I was just a girl with a useless degree and impossible dreams, sitting at a table full of people who should have loved me enough to believe. It's a real job, David, I said, my voice smaller than I intended. The words felt fragile as they left my mouth, like soap bubbles that might pop before they reached him. Sure it is, he replied, and there was something cruel in his smile, something that enjoyed my discomfort. Just don't expect to make real money doing it. Not like engineering. Not like a real career. The word real hit me like a physical blow. Real. As if everything I had studied, everything I had dreamed about, everything I was planning to build was just pretend. A child's game of dress up in an adult world where only certain dreams were allowed to matter. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom with its pale pink walls and the remnants of teenage dreams still taped above my desk, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if he was right. Maybe marketing wasn't real. Maybe I was fooling myself, chasing something that didn't exist, something that would never be enough to prove I belonged at the table where decisions were made and respect was earned. But even in that darkness, even with his laughter still ringing in my ears, something inside me refused to bend. It was small and quiet, like a candle flame in a storm, but it was there. It whispered that he was wrong, that his laughter said more about his fears than my dreams, that success wasn't measured by other people's definitions of what mattered. I didn't know then that this moment would become the foundation of everything I built afterward. I didn't know that his mockery would become the fuel that powered my late nights and early mornings, my extra courses and weekend projects, my relentless pursuit of excellence in a field he deemed unworthy. I didn't know that the pain of being dismissed by someone who was supposed to believe in me would teach me to believe in myself with a ferocity that no external validation could ever match. All I knew was that I was going to prove him wrong. Not because I needed his approval, but because I needed my own. The agency was small, cramped, and smelled permanently of coffee and ambition. My desk was wedged between a filing cabinet and a window that looked out onto a parking lot, but to me, it felt like the center of the universe. Every campaign brief, every client meeting, every late night spent perfecting presentations felt like small acts of rebellion against everyone who had ever made me feel small. My coworkers were young and hungry, fueled by the same mixture of hope and desperation that kept me working until the security guard had to ask me to leave. We ate takeout at our desks and celebrated small victories with champagne in plastic cups. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. That mattered. The work was harder than I had expected. Clients changed their minds like weather patterns. Budgets disappeared overnight. And campaigns I had poured my heart into sometimes failed spectacularly despite everything I had given them. There were nights I went home questioning everything, wondering if David had been right, if I was just playing pretend in a world that had no place for me. But then there were the other nights. The nights when a campaign exceeded all expectations, when a client called to say our strategy had transformed their business, when I sat in meetings and realized that people were listening to my ideas, actually listening, and that my voice carried weight in rooms where decisions were made. David called occasionally, usually when he was between jobs or feeling generous enough to check on his little sister's hobby. He would ask about work with the kind of polite condescension reserved for children's activities, nodding along as I tried to explain campaign strategies and client wins, his eyes glazing over with boredom or dismissal. That sounds nice, he would say, the pause before nice, heavy with everything he wasn't saying. Are you making enough to live on? Money became the measuring stick he used to gauge my worth, as if salary was the only language that mattered, the only translation that could make my choices comprehensible to him. When I told him about my first raise, he calculated against his starting engineering salary and found it wanting. When I moved to a one-bedroom apartment, he compared it to his house and pronounced it adequate for now. I stopped calling him with good news. I stopped seeking his approval or waiting for his pride. Instead, I channeled everything into my work, into becoming undeniably excellent at something he had deemed unworthy. Every campaign became a testament to my competence, every client relationship a building block in the fortress I was constructing. Around my professional identity, the transformation wasn't sudden. It was built in small moments, tiny victories that accumulated like interest in a savings account I hadn't known I was opening, a client who specifically requested me for their next project, a campaign that won an industry award, a moment in a meeting when I realized I was the expert in the room, the person everyone turned to for answers. Slowly, I stopped feeling like I was pretending to belong and started actually belonging. My third year at the agency, everything changed. I had been working on a campaign for a tech startup, something complex involving market positioning and consumer psychology, the kind of strategic thinking that required both creativity and analytical precision. The campaign didn't just succeed, it exploded. Sales increased by 300% in the first quarter. The startup secured major funding, and industry publications wrote case studies about our approach. Suddenly, I wasn't just a marketing coordinator anymore. I was the marketing coordinator who had created the campaign everyone was talking about. Headhunters started calling. Other agencies tried to poach me. My salary jumped, then jumped again when a competing firm made an offer I used as leverage. The recognition felt surreal at first, like trying on clothes that were too big, too important for someone who had started in a cramped office overlooking a parking lot. But gradually, I grew into it. I learned to own my expertise, to speak with authority about strategies and market trends, to trust that my instincts were worth listening to. Industry conferences invited me to speak. Trade publications quoted me in articles. My LinkedIn profile, once a desperate attempt to appear professional, became a magnet for opportunities I had never imagined possible. I wasn't just working in marketing anymore. I was becoming a voice that people in marketing wanted to hear. David heard about the award from our parents. He called me that night, and for the first time, there was something different in his voice. Not quite respect, but confusion, as if he was trying to solve an equation that didn't add up, according to his understanding of how the world worked. Mom said you won some kind of award, he said. The Regional Marketing Excellence Award, I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral, trying not to let him hear how much his acknowledgement still meant to me despite everything. For the Nexus campaign, he paused, and I could almost hear him recalibrating. That's actually pretty impressive. It was the first time he had ever used the word impressive in connection with my work, and I hated how much that small concession warmed something in my chest that I had tried so hard to freeze. But I was different now. The validation felt nice, but I didn't need it anymore. I had built something that stood on its own merits, something that didn't require his approval to be real. 5 years after that first laugh in our kitchen, I was leading a team of 12 at one of the city's most prestigious marketing firms. My office had windows that looked out over the downtown skyline, and my name was on the door with the title, Senior Director of Strategic Marketing, printed beneath it in clean, authoritative font. I had learned to wear success like a well-tailored suit, comfortable and confident, no longer surprised when clients specifically requested me for their most important projects. My campaigns had helped launch 3 successful startups and had repositioned 2 major corporations during critical market transitions. I spoke at conferences, mentored junior marketers, and served on the advisory board of my college's communications program. The industry knew my name. When people talked about innovative marketing strategies, my work came up in conversations. When companies needed someone to turn around struggling campaigns or launch high-stakes products, they called me. Money wasn't a concern anymore. I had bought a downtown condo with exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows, furnished it with pieces I had chosen because I loved them, not because they were all I could afford. I drove a car I had selected for its safety ratings and aesthetic appeal, not because it was the only option within my budget. I traveled for pleasure, ate at restaurants I wanted to try, bought books without checking their prices first, but more than the material success, I had found something I hadn't even known I was looking for, unshakable confidence in my own competence. I knew I was good at what I did, not good for someone who had started with a degree people dismissed, not good considering where I had come from, just good. Excellent, actually. One of the best in a field that demanded both analytical precision and creative vision. David and I still talked occasionally, usually at family gatherings where conversation was unavoidable. He had stopped making jokes about my career, though I could see him sometimes looking puzzled when our parents mentioned my latest promotion or achievement, as if he was trying to solve a riddle he couldn't quite work out. He was doing well in his engineering career, working for a stable firm, designing systems that kept buildings safe and functional. It was important work, valuable work, and I was genuinely proud of him. But it was also predictable work, the kind of career path that followed a clear trajectory from degree to entry-level position to senior engineer to management. If he chose that route, my path had been different, wilder, full of pivots and reinventions, and opportunities that hadn't existed when I was in college. I had helped create an entire marketing approach that other firms now studied and copied. I had built something that bore my fingerprints, something unique and valuable, and entirely my own. I thought about that kitchen conversation sometimes, about the girl I had been who believed that his laughter might be the truth about her dreams. I wished I could go back and tell her what I knew now, that other people's limitations aren't your limitations, that being underestimated is sometimes the greatest gift you can receive, that proving yourself to yourself is the only validation. That actually matters, but mostly I didn't think about it at all. I was too busy building the next campaign, mentoring the next eager coordinator, creating the next strategy that would help a client achieve something they hadn't thought possible. The email appeared in my inbox on a Tuesday morning in October, mixed in between client updates and industry newsletters. The subject line was formal, neutral, application for senior marketing strategist position. I almost deleted it without opening it. We received dozens of unsolicited applications every week, but something made me click. David Martinez. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at his name in our applicant database, his resume attached and clean, professional formatting that listed his engineering experience and, more recently, an MBA with a concentration in marketing strategy. had been laid off 3 months ago when his engineering firm downsized. The cover letter, written in a careful, measured tone, explained that he was looking to transition into marketing, drawn by the dynamic opportunities and creative challenges the field offered. He had taken courses, earned certifications, and was eager to apply his analytical skills to strategic marketing initiatives. The irony was so sharp it almost cut me. The brother who had laughed at my career choice, who had dismissed marketing as not real work, was now asking for a job at the firm where I was a senior director. He was asking me, though he didn't know it yet, to give him a chance in the field he had once mocked. I read his application 3 times, looking for some acknowledgement of our history, some recognition of the cruel irony of the situation. But there was nothing. Just a standard cover letter and resume from a career changer seeking an entry-level position in marketing strategy, apparently unaware that his little sister, the one whose dreams he had laughed at, was now in a position to make hiring decisions. My assistant knocked on my office door. "The applications for the strategist position are ready for your review," she said, holding a stack of folders. "Should I schedule the initial interviews?" "Give me another day," I said, still staring at David's name on my screen. "I want to review everything carefully." That night, I sat in my condo with a glass of wine and David's application spread across my coffee table. His qualifications were actually solid for a career changer. The MBA was from a good school. He had relevant project management experience, and his analytical background would translate well to marketing strategy. Under different circumstances, he might have been a candidate worth considering, but these weren't different circumstances. These were the circumstances where I remembered being 22 and small and humiliated in our family kitchen, where I remembered every dismissive comment and patronizing question every time he had made me feel like my dreams were just elaborate games of pretend. I had 2 choices. I could reject his application quietly, just another resume in the stack that didn't make the cut. Or I could give him an interview. Let him sit across from me in my office with its windows and its title on the door, and watch him realize that the little sister he had mocked was now the gatekeeper to the career he wanted. The second option felt like justice. The first felt like mercy. I thought about the girl I had been, the one who had absorbed his laughter like poison and almost let it stop her from becoming who she was meant to be. What would she want me to do? What would serve her best revenge or grace? But then I thought about the woman I had become, the one who no longer needed external validation to know her worth, who had built something beautiful and important despite every voice that told her it wasn't possible. What did she owe to anyone who had tried to make her smaller? The interview was scheduled for Thursday at 2 o'clock. I didn't put my name on the calendar invite. It simply listed Senior Director Interview with the time and location. I wanted to see his face when he walked into my office, wanted to witness the exact moment when he realized how completely the tables had turned. He arrived 5 minutes early, wearing a navy suit and carrying a leather portfolio that looked new, purchased, specifically for this transition into the world he had once dismissed. Through my office window, I watched him in the reception area, checking his phone, straightening his tie, practicing the kind of nervous energy I remembered from my own early interviews. My assistant bless me. "David Martinez is here for his interview. Send him in." I stood behind my desk as the door opened, framed by the windows that looked out over the city, surrounded by the awards and recognition that proved every dismissive word he had ever said wrong. The moment of recognition was everything I had imagined: confusion, then shock, then a careful attempt to hide his surprise behind professional composure. "Hi, David," I said, keeping my voice neutral, businesslike. "Please have a seat." He sat in the chair across from my desk, the same kind of chair I had sat in countless times as a junior employee, nervous and eager and hoping someone would give me a chance. Now I was the someone, and he was hoping. "I have to say," he began, his voice carefully controlled, "I had no idea you worked here. This is unexpected. Is it?" I asked, looking down at his resume. "You applied for a position at Martinez and Associates. Did you not research the company leadership?" The lie came. Easily. Our firm wasn't called Martinez and Associates. That would have been too perfectly ironic, but I wanted to see if he would admit to applying blindly, without doing the research any serious candidate should have done. Of course I did," he said, though his hesitation suggested otherwise. "I just didn't make the connection." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our history filling the space between us. Everything I had ever wanted to say to him crowded into my throat. All the times his dismissal had hurt, all the nights I had worked harder because of his mockery, all the success I had built despite his conviction that my dreams weren't worth pursuing. But I was a professional now, sitting in my office conducting an interview for a position I had the power to fill or deny. This wasn't our family kitchen anymore. Here, I held all the cards. "Tell me," I said, leaning back in my chair, "what draws you to marketing? It's quite a departure from engineering." He launched into his prepared answer about dynamic challenges and creative opportunities, but I could see the awkwardness in his posture, the careful way he was choosing his words. He knew what he had said about marketing, knew that I remembered, and now he had to convince me that the field he had once mocked was worthy of his talents. "You know," I interrupted gently, "the last time we talked about marketing, you seemed to have some reservations about it as a career path." His face flushed. That was ... I was younger then. I didn't understand the complexity of the field. "What changed your mind?" The question hung in the air between us. He could give me another prepared answer about market dynamics and consumer psychology, or he could be honest about the fact that his supposedly superior career path had led him to unemployment while his sister's pretend job had led her to a corner office. "I realized I was wrong," he said finally, and something in his voice was different now, less polished, more real. "I was wrong about a lot of things. It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was closer to acknowledgement than I had ever received from him." I found myself studying his face, looking for the brother who had laughed at my dreams, trying to reconcile that person with the man sitting across from me asking for a chance in the field he had once dismissed. The interview continued for another 20 minutes. His qualifications were solid, his answers thoughtful, his potential genuine. Under different circumstances, if he had been a stranger with the same background, I might have moved him to the next round of interviews, but he wasn't. A stranger. He was the person who had made me feel small when I needed support, who had questioned my worth when I needed encouragement, who had taught me that I couldn't count on my own family to believe in me when belief was what I needed most. As he gathered his portfolio and prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. "I'm proud of what you've built here." The words I had once desperately wanted to hear felt strange now, too late and not quite enough. But there was something genuine in them, something that suggested he finally understood the weight of what he had dismissed so casually all those years ago. After he left, I sat alone in my office as the afternoon light slanted through the windows, thinking about power and forgiveness, about who we become and who we used to be. I thought about the girl who had absorbed his laughter and almost let it define her limits, and the woman who had built something beautiful despite everyone who said she couldn't. I had the power to give him what he wanted or to deny it. I could hire him and prove that I was the bigger person, or I could reject his application and let him learn what it felt like to have someone dismiss his dreams. Either choice would tell him something about who I had become, but more importantly, either choice would tell me something about who I wanted to be. The decision, when it came, felt inevitable and right. I wasn't the girl in the kitchen anymore, the one who needed his approval to know her worth. I was the woman who had built her own validation, who had learned that success wasn't about proving other people wrong, but about proving yourself right. Picked up my phone and called HR. About the Martinez application for the senior strategist position, I said. I think we should move him to the next round of interviews. Set him up with the team lead. Let's see what they think. Because in the end, the most powerful thing I could do wasn't revenge or mercy. It was treating him exactly like any other candidate, no better and no worse than he deserved based on his qualifications alone. It was showing him that his opinion of me, positive or negative, no longer had the power to influence my decisions. I was beyond his judgment now, beyond his ability to make me feel small or grateful. I was exactly who I had always been meant to be, and that was worth more than any revenge could ever offer. The girl who had been laughed at in the kitchen was gone. The woman who remained was kind, professional, and utterly secure in her own success, and that, I realized, was the best possible outcome of all.